Good morning to all. Pranam, welcome. Pranam to all the devotees online as well via Zoom. So,
I'm not sure if you are very audible on Zoom because I was on Zoom and I couldn't hear you well.
let's see. Yeah, I'm audible. Yeah, I had it off. I had it off before starting, but now it's on. So, so welcome back, and we are today continuing with Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th Canto, chapter number 20. Vamandev, Bali Mahārāja, Leela. Yesterday we were I briefly summarized, at least for myself, hopefully for you as well, the Leela and some of the contents of the chapter, emphasizing how God Himself comes to our life in a very unassuming, humble way, as a sweeper, if you will, as a dwarf, and therefore, due to the humility of His approach, we are to correspond correspondingly. I mean, that's why Mahaprabhu is saying Trinada Pisunichena. It's not that we are asked to do something that God is not doing first. So that's always the way we have to conceive our practice. Whatever I'm invited to give, to do, He's already doing that to begin with. He did the kickstart, an adi kickstart from time without beginning. So if I'm praying to Krishna, it's because He made the kickstart for me to be praying to Him, basically. And I'm trying to give back the embrace, so to say. He already threw His arms to me, and I'm chanting, trying to do something about it and reciprocate that embrace, and so on and so forth. Also, we talked a little bit about Atmanivedanam yesterday, since Bali Mahārāja personifies that particular aspect of bhakti, this Nava Lakshman Bhakti, Shravan Kirtan, Vishnu Smaran, concluding in Atmanivedanam, is personified by different stalwarts in our tradition, and Bali Mahārāja is the Atmanivedanam personified. And we mentioned about, in connection to Atmanivedana, an offering of oneself, how we are the offering, and sometimes we may offer things to Krishna, hopefully with the result that we will realize I am the offering. I was the ultimate offering. I was the swaha, so to say. I was to enter into the fire of dedication. Also, we analyzed the interesting dynamics in which Bali Mahārāja has been cursed by his guru, Sukracharya, and how, despite being cursed unjustly, because of his embrace of truth, basically, Bali Mahārāja was determined in remaining truthful, and his guru cursed him because of that. So basically, that means his guru didn't act as a guru, because if a guru cursed the disciple because you are truthful, then we have a problem then with the guru in that case. And as we will see, Bali Mahārāja attained the ultimate success. We also quote to the case of Prishadra, in the Bhagavatam, who also was unjustly cursed, somehow rejected by his guru Vasishtha, and despite that he attained the ultimate success. So there is place, the Bhagavatam is given reference for, there is place for guru cursing and rejecting the disciple for the wrong reasons, and for the disciple to attain success if being truthful and sincere. What else? We also talk about Bali Mahārāja's truthfulness and how powerful that was for him. He said, for me, untruthfulness is the greatest fear. It's worse than death. So I'm willing to embrace the truth no matter what. Even if I'm ready to lose, if I will lose everything, at least I won't lose truthfulness. I won't betray myself. I will be at peace with my pillow at night. My consciousness won't devour me, that I betrayed myself. So we recall how one of our 4 regulative principles is no gambling, no casino. Thank you so much, Janita. He just came. We organized that choreography. He will came just in that precise moment. So thank you. So eventually, yesterday we shared, the verse we shared yesterday was verse 21, was about Vamandev starting to grow in size to the point that basically everything was inside of him. All universes, sky, ether, all different types of personalities who inhabit this multiverse, everything was in the body of the so-called dwarf, who started to undwarf himself and expand and expand and expand to the point that nothing remained outside of him. We gave the similar Leela of Krishna eating dirt, and there's some dirt, but actually he didn't eat dirt, because for you to eat something means you have to take something outside of you and put it inside of you. But when Yashoda saw inside Krishna's mouth, he saw everything is inside his mouth. So technically speaking, he didn't eat dirt, because to eat something, you have to take something from outside and put inside, but everything was inside of him. So in one sense, Krishna, technically speaking, didn't lie. Although Krishna lies a lot, in a more substantial level, he's not lying ever. So in connection to this manifestation of Krishna showing everything inside of him, Bhamandev, we talked about panentheism. Maybe you recall this idea of everything in God and God in everything, in connection to Achintya Veda Veda as well. And we concluded a few words also, and we will continue today in connection to how this world of matter is to be seen as sacred, not as profane. Since God is inhabiting every corner of creation, every atom is an altar, potentially. That's the vision of the highest type of devotee. So in connection to what we saw yesterday, today we will continue. Let's see if time allows to conclude the chapter. I don't know. There are a few verses, but all of them in a similar line. So almost every verse from now on till the end of the chapter will give a more detailed description of what's going on here with Bhamandev's expansion till the point of everything being included within him. And that's what we will call Virad-Rupa Darshan. Virad-Rupa means universal form, in which everything, the whole universe, literally Virad, is included in that particular Rupa, in that particular form. So Bali Mahārāja is having this Darshan. Darshan means to see, or of course to be seen by also. But in this case, it applies to him witnessing the universal form of Bhamandev. So let me share a few verses from this section, from verse 22 till verse 29, which is basically the description of the Virad-Rupa, and then we will elaborate a little bit on that. So verse 22 says like this. Kaye balistasya mahabhibhute sahartvigacharya sadasya etad tadarsha vishvam trigunam gunatmake bhutendriyartasya jiva yuktam. So translation, Srila Prabhupada says, Bali Mahārāja, along with all the priests, ācāryas, and members of the assembly, observed the Supreme Personality of Godhead's universal body, which was full of 6 opulences. That body contained everything within the universe, including all the gross material elements, the sense objects, the mind, intelligence, and false ego, the various kinds of living entities, and the actions and reactions of the 3 modes of material nature. So purport by Srila Prabhupada says, in Bhagavad Gita, the Supreme Personality of Godhead says, Ham sarvasya prabhavo mata sarvam pravartate. Krishna is the origin of everything. Vasudeva sarvamiti. Krishna is everything. Matstani sarvabhutani nachaham tesvavastitaha. Everything rests in the body of the Lord. Yet the Lord is not everywhere. Mayavadi philosophers think that since the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Absolute Truth, has become everything, he has no separate existence. Their philosophy is called Advaitavad. Actually, however, their philosophy is not correct. Here, Bali Mahārāja was the seer of the Personality of Godhead's universal body, and that body was that which was seen. Thus, there is Dvaitavad. There is always 2 entities, the seer and the seen, Drishta and Drishya. The seer is a part of the whole, but he is not equal to the whole. The part of the whole, the seer, is also one with the whole, but since he is but a part, he cannot be the complete whole at any time. This achintya bheda, simultaneous oneness and difference, is a perfect philosophy propounded by Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So this verse 22, where this Virad-Rupa Darsana is started to unfold, so to say. And of course, Srila Prabhupada here in the purport quotes Bhagavad Gita, many directions, many verses, mentioning how Krishna is the source of everything, Krishna is everything. Vasudeva Sarvam, he's everything. But then he starts to qualify by sharing other verses and other. I mean, immediately after saying Krishna is everything, he says, but this is not my just in case. No, he starts to mention this distinction that Bali Mahārāja is witnessing. Everything is in Krishna, but still Bali Mahārāja is Bali Mahārāja. No, it's not that Bali Mahārāja is also Krishna and he's witnessing himself, or he's going to rainbow party and say, I'm enjoying with myself. This is Leela's Jai Jagannath was sharing yesterday. So it's important, of course, to emphasize how Krishna is everything, but also how at the same time there is distinction. We will be quick to invoke the Veda side of the equation, but also it's important to invoke the Aveda side of the equation. If we invoke too much Veda, too much difference, we can end up being dualistic in every sense of the term. Too much difference is also a problem. And too much unity becomes boring. Basically, there's nobody else, so there's no interaction. But too much difference is conflict. Difference. So we need to integrate the two of them. So that's a Achintya Bheda. So let me go to the next verse and verses. Verse 23. Let's go through the whole description of the Virad-Rupa. Verse 23 says, thereafter Bali Mahārāja, who was occupying the seat of Indra, could see the lower planetary systems such as Rasatala on the soles of the feet of the Lord's universal form. He saw on the Lord's feet the surface of the globe, on the surface of his calves all the mountains, on his knees, the various birds, and on his thighs the varieties of air. Prabhupada says, the universal situation is described herein in regard to the complete constitution of the Lord's gigantic universal form. The study of this universal form begins from the soul. Soul, you say? Yeah. Above the soles are the feet, above the feet are the calves. Calves?
Yeah.
I never heard that word. I thought it was just the son of the cow. Yeah.
What do they call it? Ascendant? Two words of the same but are different meaning?
No.
It's okay.
Cinnamon is different words with the same.
Antonym?
No, that's the opposite of something. Above the feet are the calves, above the calves are the knees, above the knees are the thighs. Thus the parts of the universal body, one after another, are described herein. The knees are the place of birds, and above there are varieties of air. The birds can fly over the mountains, and above the birds are varieties of air. Verse 24. Bali Mahārāja saw beneath the garments of the Lord, who acts wonderfully, the evening twilight. In the Lord's private parts he saw the Prajapatis, and in the round portion of the waist he saw himself with his confidential associates. So he saw himself, but still he saw himself. In the Lord's navel he saw the sky, on the Lord's waist he saw the 7 oceans, and on the Lord's bosom he saw all the clusters of stars. Now comes 5 verses in one chunk. My dear king, Sukadeva is talking to Parikshit, on the heart of Lord Murari he saw religion, on the chest both pleasing words and truthfulness, in the mind the moon, on the bosom the goddess of fortune, with the lotus flower in her hand, on the neck all the Vedas and all sound vibrations, on the arms all the demigods, headed by King Indra, in both ears all the directions, on the head the upper planetary systems, on the hair the clouds, in the nostrils the wind, on the eyes the sun, and in the mouth fire. From his words came all the Vedic mantras, on his tongue was the demigod of water, Varunadev, on his eyebrows were the regulative principles, and on his eyelids were day and night. When his eyes clarification by Prabhupada here. When his eyes were open, it was daytime, and when they were closed, it was night. On his forehead was anger, and on his lips was greed. O king, in his touch were lusty desires, and in his semen were all the waters. On his back was irreligion, and in his wonderful activities or steps was the fire of sacrifice. On his shadow was death, in his smile was the illusory energy, and on the hairs of his body were all the drugs and herbs. In his veins were all the rivers, and on his nails were all the stones. In his intelligence were Lord Brahma, the demigods and the great saintly persons, and throughout his entire body and senses were all living entities, moving and stationary. Bali Mahārāja thus saw everything in the gigantic body of the Lord. So here we reach till verse 29. We have a few more verses that hopefully I may read before we conclude, but a few words in this connection. So this is the Virad-Rupa darshan, description of a form of how everything finds its place, so to say, in this particular form of Bhagavan, form of the Lord. And Virad-Rupa darshan is not only in this section, so that's an interesting thing. This is not only the only part in the Bhagavatam where Virad-Rupa is described. In the second canto, 5th chapter, you can also find the Virad-Rupa darshan. In the 8th canto, 20th chapter, you can also have Virad-Rupa darshan. In the 10th canto, chapter 85, you can also find the Virad-Rupa darshan. In the Bhagavad Gita, you can find also that. So it's everywhere, basically. So there's some purpose to that also. It's because, I mean, if as in the scriptures is mentioned, if something is repeated throughout a particular text, there's some purpose to that. It's not that the author didn't have what to put there and let's fill in with copy paste of what I put a few chapters before. That may sound like redundant. So generally when something is repeated in one way or another, that's for the sake of emphasis. Like when you hear also in verses like, I don't know, Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Nam Aiva Kevalam, Alo Nastiev. I mean, it's the author having some problem with repetition, or like how to say in English when someone stutter. No, that has nothing to do with that. Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra. There's some emphasis there. Sometimes they call it Stuna Nika Nana Nyaya, which means like the logic of pounding the post. No? Like if I'm talking about something, I say we have to give ourselves to Krishna. We have to give ourselves to Krishna. We have to give ourselves to. That will stay with you. It's like, why Maharaj is saying this 3 times? It has to be sustainable. Like if you want to put a picture on the wall, you won't just hit the nail, you say? Just once. No? Let's put the picture. 1, 2, 3, probably 108. Who knows? No? And then the picture will be sustainable. So for our bhakti project to be sustainable, sometimes we need some pounding on the post. And especially this Virad-Rupa darshan, apart from being described in all these different places in the Gita and in the Bhagavatam, interestingly, it's described almost as the very first thing that Sukadeva Goswami gives to Parikshit Maharaj as his initial reply to Parikshit's initial questions in the second canto, first chapter of the Bhagavatam. You can see verses 26 through 37. You will find this Virad-Rupa darshan, which is not the goal for us, Gaudiya Vaishnavas. I'm not here changing our prayojan and saying our prayojan is Virad-Rupa, to see the Virad-Rupa and that's it. But for some reason, Sukadeva Goswami is starting with that reply almost. No? It's described in the scriptures sometimes as a yogic meditative tool. Like, okay, you can gain some conception and start to see how everything is inside of Krishna, to look at the world, perceiving God's presence there, and so on and so forth. So it's not the goal for us. The goal is Krishna Prema and to serve Shri Radha and Krishna Mahaprabhu Nityanava in a very personal, unique way. Very radically personal, as Jai Jagan Prabhu quoted the other day, Aindra Prabhu, like personal. Everything is ultra specified ultimately. But we have to begin somewhere. No? So sometimes scripture will have this consideration. No? We have to begin somewhere. Krishna will say again, Chaturvida Vajante, you may be approaching me because you are suffering like hell and you want some relief. Okay, come. That's not our prayojan. Stop suffering. As we talked in the seminar, our prayojan is chant Hare Krishna and be unhappy. No? Vicariously empathize with Sri Radha's eternal pain. Chant and be unhappy. But Prabhupada knew I cannot say that from day one. So chant and be happy first. We'll figure out the details in time. Then we'll add the other two letters in the equation, and I will explain you what that means. Which is ecstatic. That pain is ecstatic nonetheless. Bahya Bisya Jalahai Bitare Anandamai Krishna Premiradhut Charit, says Krishna Das Kaviraj. No? Bahya Bisya Jalahai Bitare. Externally, separation and prem in particular seems like poison, Bisa. But internally, Bitare Anandamai is full of Ananda. Krishna Premiradhut Charit. These are the astonishing qualities of divine love. So yeah, watch out for the just getting stuck in the external aspect of that. I remember in Argentina one devotee. What's that? Someone is having the mic on? Yeah, that's off now. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, I remember one devotee was unfortunately stopped being a devotee and he became, I will tell you what he became, but he told me that Maharaj, but how our goal of life is to be like Mahaprabhu, like crying and hitting the face on the wall of the Gambhira and rolling on the ground and perspiring blood. No, thank you. No, he became Buddhist. No, he just went for the No. Because he took like eternal suffering to that degree. I don't want to suffer. So it's important that we get the proper. So that's, in one sense, our goal, properly understood. But to reach that goal, we have to begin somewhere. So Virad-Rupa Darsana is a pretty interesting foundation to begin with, from where we are in this world. No? How to relate to where we are, how to see God in the world and the world in God. That's a pretty effective foundation for our bhakti project. It's like when in the Ramananda Sambat, the conversation between Mahaprabhu and Sri Rai Ramananda, Mahaprabhu is asking Sadhya about Sadhya Sadhana Tattva, which is the truth about the goal of life, Sadhya and Sadhana. So he asked Ramananda, tell me what's the goal of life? And support your statement by quoting Shastra. So what's the very first thing that Ramananda Roy suggested? Varna ashram. No? So engage properly in Varna ashram, that's the goal of life. No? So he quoted Vishnu Purana, he gave Praman. No? So Mahaprabhu, of course, rejected that. But at the same time, there is a purpose why Varna ashram was put first into the whole picture of parade of opportunities. No? Like implying Varna ashram, as we spoke these days, Varna ashram has to do with being a balanced human being, essentially. To be in sattva. To be in sattva enough so you can really project to transcendence in a realistic way, not in a dysfunctional way, in an evasive way. So sattva has to do, have your material stuff relatively in place, solved, be relatively balanced. So you don't go to bhakti for that balance, so to say, but go for something else. Balances. So although it's rejected by Mahaprabhu as the ultimate goal of life, it doesn't mean he's rejecting it in every single sense of the term. No, he's accepting that as foundation, and that's why Ramananda always said, first Varna ashram, like implying first have this foundation of balanced humanity, and on that construct your bhakti, that foundation, erect your bhakti temple, so to say. So in the same way, Virad-Rupa is not the ultimate prayojan, but Sukadev Goswami begins almost answering to Parikshit Maharaj with that, like implying, okay, we want Krishna, Braja, Leela, and so on and so forth, but first, Don't be dysfunctional in this world and try to find God in everything, and try to find everything in Him. Try to, at least in theory, know that that's the case. Even if you don't have that vision, which probably we don't have, since that's the vision of the Uttam Bhagavat, at least try to to relate to your immediate environment in terms of sacredness, basically. So this Virad-Rupa in the Bhagavatam is described as in one sense, the first avatar of Bhagavan, which manifests before any other avatars come here. Because again, first you have to have the stage, so then comes the characters of the drama. Avatar means descent from up to down, crossing from up to down. So not only Krishna, Ram, so many others are descending from up to down. Mahaprabhu himself, if they descend, of course, they have their abode there, which is, for me, it's an important point in the sense that, for example, some people argues that Mahaprabhu doesn't have his own abode eternally. That's a separate chapter that comes to mind now. Some people, especially from one particular parivar in our Gaudiya Sampradaya, will say Mahaprabhu doesn't have, there is not eternal Nitya Navadvip, so to say. But Mahaprabhu is considered avatar, Gaur avatar. So avatar means you are crossing from up to down. So that means you have to be coming from somewhere up. That means you have your own place there to manifest here. But before all these avatars descend, they descend here to this planet, and somehow the planet, with all its ingredients, is included in this Virad-Rupa, divine descent. So this world, as we quoted, I think yesterday, Vedanta Sutra says, Lokavatu Lila Kaibalyam. This material creation, Srishti Lila, is the outcome of another Lila, of the Lila of divine love between Krishna and his devotees. And that starts to overflow, and the sprinkling of that becomes what we call Srishti Lila, which is embedded with, the ultimate purpose of all this Srishti Lila is tied deeply, intimately tied to the divine love between Sri Radha and Krishna. It's interesting, there is one, I was reading in this connection, and I include that in the last chapter of my book, which is on this topic. There's one Greek philosopher called Pseudo Dionysius, and he will say the whole material creation is an erotic outpouring, not in an ordinary sense. No? So technically speaking, we agree with that. Because the ultimate union between Sri Radha and Krishna is the original eros. And that becomes, the overflowing of that appears as the material creation according to Vedanta Sutra. So that's very interesting. So anyhow, the point is that this Virad-Rupa is, let me share what Srila Prabhupada says in one purport in this connection. Bhagavatam 2.124. He describes as follows. He says, the omnipotent Lord has his transcendental eyes, heads, and other bodily parts distributed everywhere. He can see, hear, touch, or manifest himself anywhere and everywhere, for he's present everywhere. So this is one commentary of Prabhupada in the description of Virad-Rupa, when Sukadev Goswami is sharing this as a reply to Parikshit Maharaj. So of course the question is how much time per day, at least that I ask it to myself, how much time per day do I spend meditating on this? Okay, Krishna is everywhere. Of course, Krishna is also localized. He has his lila, he's transcendent, but he's also immanent, and both are part of the same equation. So it's very, very important, again, to learn to find God everywhere. This is the meaning of the verses we are studying now. Krishna, everything is in Krishna. Krishna is in everything. Everything is in Krishna. Krishna is in everything. Let me share a few sections, one section from my book where I share another quote from the Bhagavatam, which pound this post over and over again. Because sometimes if we are not, and that happened to me, I read the Bhagavatam many times, but when I said, okay, I will write a chapter in my book on panentheism and God present in everything, I suddenly start to, so many verses from the Bhagavatam were kind of like, oh, did I read this? I read this verse so many times, but now it's like, coming in a particular light. So, for example, it says verses, I mean, this is just one paragraph. I put a few pages of quotes just for the devotees to know. This is not Padmanabha Swami's sutras, Siddhanta, but this is Bhagavatam. So verses 10, 9, 13, 14 of the Bhagavatam also describe the sweet absolute as having neither outside nor inside, neither front nor back, existing in front of the cosmos as well as behind it, both within and without, and being the very cosmos himself. That's in context with the Damodar Lila section, if I'm not mistaken. Likewise, verse 10, 10, 29 presents the Supreme Lord as being everything, and this cosmic manifestation being his form. Similarly, Brahma speaks of unlimited universes coming out of the pores of God's body, 10, 14, 11, as nothing existing outside of his belly, 10, 14, 12, and God's body containing and sheltering the universe. In his commentary on Bhagavatam 10, 14, 21, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur mentions, Krishna's unlimited spiritual form is full of all opulences, and though it is not material, it exists everywhere in the material universe. So I'll repeat it one more, this one. He says, Krishna's unlimited spiritual form is full of all opulences, and though it is not material, it exists everywhere in the material universe. So before we continue, try to stop and meditate on that one for a moment. Krishna's spiritual form exists everywhere in the material universe, which is part of everywhere. So again, we don't try to think that much about. Try to think about that for a moment, but not too much, because too much smoke may come and we may set Harmony Collective on fire, and that's not the idea. But it's at least just to connect with that fact is astonishing. And Krishna's form is all-pervading, it's everywhere. So how do I relate with everything, which somehow is can be a portal to Krishna's unlimited form, so to say, if properly addressed. Let me read the last verses of the chapter and share a few words of conclusion. Verses 30 till 34, which are more like conclusion verses. Almost Prabhupada is not sharing purpose here. O king, when all the demons, remember, after the description of the Virad-Rupa comes this section, when all the demons, the followers of Maharaj Bali, saw the universal form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who held everything within his body, when they saw in the Lord's hand his disc, known as the Sudarshan Chakra, which generates intolerable heat, and when they heard the tumultuous sound of his bow, all of this caused lamentation within their hearts. Then comes verse 31, the Lord's conch shell named Panchayanya, which made sounds like that of a cloud, the very forceful club named Komodaki, the sword named Vidyadhara, with a shield decorated with hundreds of moon-like spots, and also Akshaya Sayaka, the best of quivers, all of these appeared together to offer prayers to the Lord. Now comes all the prayers, not prayers, but in the description of different entities praying to this particular Virad-Rupa. Verse 32 and 33. These associates, headed by Sunanda and other chief associates and accompanied by all predominating deities of the various planets, offered prayers to the Lord, who wore a brilliant helmet, bracelets, and glittering earrings that resembled fish. On the Lord's bosom were the lock of hair called Srivatsa and the transcendental jewel named Kaustuva. He wore a yellow garment covered by a belt, and he was decorated by a flower garland surrounded by bees. This is a classical depiction of Bhagavan. Manifesting himself in this way, O King, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose activities are wonderful, covered the entire surface of the earth with one footstep, the sky with his body, and all directions with his arms. So here comes the first of the three steps. And Prabhupada says something here in his purport. One might argue, since Bali Maharaj promised Vamandev only the land occupied by his steps, why did Lord Vamandev occupy the sky also? In this regard, Srila Jiva Goswami says that the steps include everything downward and upward. When one stands up, he certainly occupies certain parts of the sky and certain portions of the earth below his feet. Thus, there was nothing uncommon for the Supreme Personality of Godhead when he occupied the entire sky with his body. So he was not cheating. There was no cheating. We are occupying now some aspect of the sky. So Vamandev has his own criterion about it. Yeah. So let's go to the last verse, verse 34 of this chapter 20. As the Lord took his second step, he covered the heavenly planets, and not even a spot remained for the third step. For the Lord's foot extended higher and higher beyond Maharlok, Janalok, Tapalok, and even Satyalok. Let's read Prabhupada brief purport. He says, when the Lord's footstep exceeded the height of all the lokas, including Maharlok, Janalok, Tapalok, and Satyalok, his nails certainly pierced the cover of the universe. The universe is covered by the 5 elements. As stated in Shastra, these elements are in layers, each 10 times thicker than the previous one. Nonetheless, the nails of the Lord pierced through all these layers and made a hole penetrating into the spiritual world. From this hole, the water of the Ganges infiltrated into this material world, and therefore it is said, he quotes Dasavatar Stotram, Padanaka Nira Janita Jana Pavana, which is the corresponding verse to Vamandev. Because the Lord kicked a hole in the covering of the universe, the water of the Ganges came into this material world to deliver all the fallen souls. Sri Ganga Devi ki jai. So that's the end of chapter 20. Next chapter will describe what to do with the third step, basically. So here is the first two. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments very interestingly, like, okay, Bali Maharaj previously said to Vamandev, I will give you whatever you want. We already know that. So the Lord was free to increase his size to obtain what he wanted. And what he wanted actually was Bali Maharaj's heart, so to say, Bali Maharaj's Atmanivedana. He wanted to witness the full surrender of Bali Maharaj, as you will see, starting from the next chapter. So here it is described in these last verses. With the first step, Vamandev covered what? Which distance?
The lower planets.
Sorry?
The lower planets.
Mm-mm.
With his first step.
Yeah. Basically, this whole planet. So it was from here upwards. So first step, this planet. Second step, even up to Brahma Lok. So the idea is, of course, where to put the third step. And it is interesting, some in between narrations that are mentioned in other Puranas. Again, Bali Maharaj very honestly said, I will give you whatever you want. I will fulfill whatever desires you have as a Brahmin. And Vamandev very simply said, I just want three steps of land, which is generally what would take for you to sit and have some like minimum. No? 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's enough. And as we mentioned, Bali Maharaj will say, Bali Maharaj will say, I can give you a whole planet, if you will, a whole kingdom, wife, castle, servants, a planet, if it's okay. So not just 3 steps. And eventually, when now Vamandev is expanding so much, there is something mentioned in the Puranas about Bali Maharaj's daughter. Her name is Ratnamala. Just like some in between narration, maybe you heard about that she was when she saw Vamandev coming as a dwarf, she felt like so charmed and attracted. Oh, this beautiful boy. I'm so attracted. I would like to embrace him. I would like to, how do you say, when you give your breast milk, there's a verb for that? No. Nurse. I would like to nurse him. And Vamandev appeared and he saw, okay, she wants that. So I bless you to have that. So she said, hopefully in my next life I can do that. Because in the dynamics of the moment, that was not possible. So she wanted that first. And Bali Mahārāja said, Vamandev said, I give you that internally. So she obtained that her next life, nursing him. But then when she saw that Vamandev was expanding and cheating her father, Bali Mahārāja, she felt like, oh my gosh, I would like to kill this cheater. No?
Oh, wow.
So, and eventually what happened as a result of those two, and Vamandev say, okay, I'll give you the blessing as well. So in the next lifetime, Ratnamala was born as Putana, who breastfed Krishna, but wanted to kill Krishna by doing that at the same time, as we know, by putting poison in her breast. But of course, at the end of the day, she was completely blessed by Sri Krishna obtaining what we call Kripa Siddhi. That's what Uddhava glorifies in the Bhagavatam. How will I surrender to someone more merciful than Krishna? There's nobody more merciful than Krishna. He gave the position of a mother in Golok to someone who wanted to kill him. I mean, that doesn't fit within logic. No, I want to kill you and you give me Vatsalya Rasa. That's pretty like unbalanced, so to say. It's not reciprocal, but that's again one example of when Krishna wants to be merciful, he can be. So interestingly, and you will see later, we already mentioned a few words about Bali Mahārāja's glories in terms of his truthfulness and his willingness to make his vow true. I promise this, I will give that, despite not only he will lose everything, but as we will see later, he will be tied by the ropes of Varuna. He will be humiliated. He will be sent to Sutala Loka. No, so one after another layer of humiliation and chastisement, and in one sense, he was totally, noble in his word and so on and so forth. But he remained fixed in his promise. No? Even when he was tied, humiliated, sent, and he was like, I have to keep my promise. I have to keep my promise. So that's a powerful lesson. No? Sometimes we keep our promise as long as the circumstances are relatively comfortable, so to say. But if you are tired, if someone is kicking you out to some other place, it's like, I'll kill that guy. I won't fulfill my promise to that person. He cheated me. Bali Mahārāja was like, of course, that guy is Bhagavan here, so that's a different. I'm not promoting be dysfunctional. If someone is cheating you, just follow Bali Mahārāja and be dysfunctional as they are kidnapping your family and burning your house. I'm not saying that, but try to take the essence of that. No, so. And of course, how Bhagavan rewarded Bali Mahārāja, that's completely out of this world, because it is mentioned that actually Rupa Goswami says in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, Bali Mahārāja obtained Kripa Siddhi. Kripa Siddhi. Along with, he gives an example of the wives of the Brahmanas, Sukadev Goswami and Bali Mahārāja. He said they achieved perfect. Kripa Siddhi means perfection by mercy. Of course, all of us want perfection by mercy, but our type of perfection, the recommended type of perfection for us to pursue is sadhana siddhi, which means perfection through sadhana, which entails mercy. But kripa siddhi means there was no sadhana at all. There was mercy. Like completely, yeah. Putin is another example again. I want to kill you and you give me perfection. How many rounds did you chant to Putin? Like minus 108, so to say. So, of course, again, this perfection by mercy is kind of winning the lottery. It's like just Krishna. Okay, no, it's not something that we recommend. Try to obtain Kripa Siddhi, because try to obtain Kripa Siddhi will mean stop doing all the sadhana you're doing, basically. No? So that's kind of winning the lottery, which probably won't happen. It's like if I say, I can win the lottery, there's a potential for becoming a millionaire by winning the lottery. So I will stop working and doing all arrangements for an income because I can win the lottery. That's not very cautious, not very sober. Just go to work and maybe you win the lottery. I mean, we shouldn't be playing lottery. This is not an example applied to Gaudiya Vaishnavas, but you follow my point. I mean, you do your sadhana. If Krishna wants to bestow undiscriminated mercy, that's a separate thing. So, of course, Krishna took away everything from Bali Mahārāja, and that's why his name is Hari, he who takes away. But also Hari means he who is taken away by his devotees, he whose mind is taken away. So in these verses, Vamanadeva is described as Hari. So Hari is, again, has this twofold meaning. In this case, he's taking away everything from Bali Mahārāja in order to give himself fully, because he's been taken away. His own mind, the very heart of Bhagavan has been taken away with him. So till now, you will continue these days, but till now, Vamanadeva has become Urukrama. Vamanadeva has two other names mostly, which is Urukrama and Trivikrama. Urukrama means he who makes very astonishing steps. So we could give that name to him. He who has made two very astonishing steps, Urukrama. But Trivikram, he will become that from the next chapter that we will see soon. Trivikram means he who makes three astonishing steps. Till now, he made two. So till now, we have taken darshan of Urukram Vamanadeva. From next class, you will be having darshan of Trivikram, and let's see where he will put his first step. So prepare your head just in case. You may be called to offer it. Bali Mahārāja may be generous enough to invite you to. Please join me here, and let's receive Bhagavan's lotus feet there as well. So, some words. I don't want to extend myself too much, but I want to conclude this chapter, which is very beautiful. Vaman Leela, Bali Mahāraja's Ki Jai. So, I don't know, we have time for if there's some question or something you may like to share. Siddha Hari Prabhu first, yeah. Jai.
Maharaj, I was wondering about the position of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, because you briefly mentioned that there's some Gaudiya Parivars don't accept his eternal abode. And I've been recently hearing, I know from some time that in Vrindavan, there are many devotees of Radha and Krishna. There are Gaudiya Vaishnavas, there are Vaishnavas, and who try to approach Krishna through Srimati Radharani or other schools like Hit Harivanshi and others. So we also hear that Krishna said that, that although I have done this pastimes for the Bhumi, but these pastimes are not accessible, that's why I will come back as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So one school of understanding which we hear is that nobody can make it through Krishna unless they go through him. Like the Jesus teaching is there, we have our own. But at the same time, I'm wondering what's the understanding of the other schools, because they seem to have very strong sadhana, because I know some devotees, some friends of mine who are at other schools, and they pray very hard also to receive mercy of Srimati Radharani. And then I'm always wondering, they don't know much about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. How is it going to get mercy of Srimati Radharani? Like, how is it possible in Kali Yuga? Is that possible? Not. So, okay. Can you share some thoughts on that?
Straight to the controversy. I will say, in my personal opinion, that yes, there is place for non-Gaudiya sadhakas to attain to Sri Radha and Krishna in eternity. I personally don't feel like, unless you become a Gaudiya Vaishnava, there is no place for you. I mean, let's take just an example, even without touching up on the sampradayas you mentioned, but going to a sampradaya like Vallabh Sampradaya. Balabhacharya. I mean, he was he was friends and included in the writings of the Goswamis, for example. Rupa Goswami refers to Maryad, to Pushti Marg in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. I mean, he uses the term. I'm not saying he's talking about Balabhacharya, but he's using the term, and he's referring directly to them because he's speaking about Vaidhi Bhakti, Raganuga Bhakti. He's saying some other people call this Maryad and Pushti. I mean, if you will think these guys are completely bogus and they're engaged in some fictitious sadhana that won't take them to the goal, I don't think Rupa Goswami will dare to include anything about them in his official treatise about bhakti, but he's doing so. And Balabhacharya, Balavis are worshipping Radha and Krishna also. So, and they're not Gaudiyas. No. In fact, they call Balabhacharya Mahaprabhu. As well as other sampradayas, they will give the name Mahaprabhu to hit Haribams and so on and so forth. So my point is just to use some basic logic from our own sampradaya. Okay, members of our own sampradaya have referred to other sampradayas which are non-Gaudiyas, showing appreciation, showing basically validating their existence, so to say, establishing that their practice, sadhana and sadhya, are real. Of course, with this, I'm not saying that anyone that comes worshiping Radha and Krishna in any form is real, but there's place. Your question basically has to do, if we don't go through Mahaprabhu, there is place for entering Braja and so on. Yes, of course, there are different sections of Golok, if you will. That's another conversation, and there, in that sense, we may say there are different manifestations, and I don't want to complicate things too much for some of you that may be hearing all the things for the first time. But for example, when I said before about Putana being killed by Krishna and being given Vatsalya Bhava, the Acharyas mentioned that Putana went to Golok, but it is described like the outer petals of the lotus of Golok, which is called the Bahir Mandal, or the outer, you say? Outer circle instead of the inner circle. So there are different petals, and Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also will speak about that. And I'm not just limiting it to 2 sections. Again, it's unlimited. Watch out. So, but some of the outer petals, he addresses that, I think, in one purport, also in Raghavarma Chandrika, but more in one purport in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that if you worship Radha and Krishna with some admixture of Vaidhi, and you are eventually not fully embracing Raga Bhakti, you may be worshipping Radha and Krishna in Golok in the outer petals where they execute Swakiya Lila there. They don't have Parakiya Lila. They have Swakiya Lila in Golok. Again, that's not the main prayojan of our Sampradaya, but that's there. And that's mentioned by Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Or like when you mentioned that the Radha Bhalavis or followers of Hithar, some of them will be just trying to enter into they call the Nitya Bihar and serving one particular, frame of the Leela, so to say, one particular situation eternally. No, they won't be talking about Ashtaka Leela and doing so many things and other associates, but they will be just serving Radha and Krishna in the Nikunja non-stop 24/7 without other dynamics of Leelas or associates. That's not our goal, but that's their goal, their portal. And I wouldn't be too passionate about trying to say that's not possible, that's not true, that cannot happen, because very subtly we may be projecting limitations into an unlimited realm. So I would say that, of course, for us Gaudiyas, we want a particular type of approach and entry and connection with Radha and Krishna in Golok, and that type of unique particular experience is the one that comes from Mahaprabhu. So at the same time, there is a uniqueness in going to brush through, so to say, Gaudiya Sampradayas. There is also a uniqueness in going through brush through other Sampradayas also. So I'm more of that type of idea, not so much like, okay, we are the best and all of others are going, but they will get always in some inferior place, but we will get on to the real one. And I don't like that. I don't feel comfortable. I don't feel the need to establish. I mean, it's the highest thing for us, and that's why we are here, of course, but not so much trying like to objectively like prove everyone else is inferior to us or stuff like that. I mean, I understand how sometimes acharyas may use strong words in that connection, but on a personal level, in how I conduct myself in my internal practice and appreciate others' practice, I find also important and healthy to appreciate other traditions. I mean, as I mentioned in my book, in the section on theological cross-pollination, I describe how Srila Jiva Goswami in his Sandarbhas, I mean, to establish the Gaudiya Siddhanta and to describe it in detail, he refers to Ramanujacharya, to Madhvacharya, he refers to Sankaracharya, and not only to refute him. So it's another way of saying how Gaudiya Vaishnavas are validating other traditions. In another, not so connected to your question, but in regarding to the spirit of appreciation and acknowledgement, other personalities from other sampradayas, even other paribars, and so on and so forth. So yeah, I will make that point. There is possibility for that, but at the same time, the way we conceive and approach and relate to Radha Krishna will have its own unique flavor by going through Mahaprabhu. And of course, just in case a clarification that, at least for us Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Mahaprabhu is not just merely a bridge to go to Radha and Krishna, but Mahaprabhu himself is an end unto itself. There is a Leela, as we were talking, Nitya Navadip. So it's not like, thank you Mahaprabhu for helping me to reach Golok, and I'm burning the bridge behind me, so to say. Of course, also, and with this I'm closing, some devotees may have extreme affinity to Radha and Krishna and Braj and are not entertaining an eternal prospect in Nitya Navadip. There's place for that. Bhaktivinoda Thakur mentions that in Jaiva Dharma as well. So as long as you acknowledge that's a possibility, that's there, and you are not offensive toward that prospect. But some may be just, I want Radha and Krishna and Braj 108%. So, okay. Again, my point is there is place for nuance and variety and even difference of opinion. So some thoughts. I hope that helps. Yeah. Something else? Yes.
I had one question from earlier on, which is in the Virad-Rupa. He says he saw things that are kind of more subtle, like he saw the directions and things like that, which are not directly seeable with our eyes. So is that like kind of divine vision that allows you to see that our regular eyes cannot see? Or what does it mean that he saw the directions? He saw the deities of the directions, or did he, how can you see the directions or things like that are more subtle? That was one question.
Yeah.
Then the second was like, his leg covered the whole earth, right? But he was also, his other leg was standing on the earth. I guess like he pushed down the earth, right? Because he was so heavy. So
as Srila Prabhupada will say in connection to the second question, you are thinking too much. Sometimes we need to receive that. I remember once one devotee was asking Prabhupada, I've studied the Leela of Krishna on a daily basis, and where he goes to one place to another, and like it takes, I measured the distance and the time it takes to get there, and it does make sense that in one whole day he reaches all. I'm probably like, you're thinking too much. Which is okay, no problem. At one point we kind of grasp it, but in connection to your question in regarding to the directions, and there are different things to say, but okay, he saw the directions. What are how do you see the directions, basically? And for us, it's always this idea of you ultimately everything has its personified version, expression. The directions there is a personification of each of the directions. Let me share a few words from Srila Siddhar Maharaj that I quote in my book in connection to this. He says, whatever we may experience is conscious, and consciousness always indicates a person. In fact, consciousness and personality are the universal basis of reality. Therefore, the great sages address whatever they find within the environment as if they are all persons. They always take the personal perspective. What we perceive to be dead matter, they perceive to be conscious. With such a vision of reality, they used to address everything within this world as a person: the trees, the mountains, the sun, the moon, the ocean. We can add the directions. Everything has a personal conception. In the background of what we can perceive with our dull senses, everything that is said to be matter, there must be a personal conception. Without the influence of a personal conception, consciousness cannot reach the stage of gross matter. From the personal conception, things evolve to gross consciousness. It is all personal. Everything is conscious first, then there is matter. Everything has its representation in the original, personal, conscious, spiritual reality. Since everything is a unit of consciousness, everything has personal existence. In the background, everything is a person. That's similar to Mahendra's Prabhu's quote of person, 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 person. This is Srila Sirama's version of it. And also we can say, like when Krishna shows Arjuna the Virad-Rupa in the Gita, 11th chapter, he's telling Arjuna, I will give you corresponding eyes to see this. Divine eyes, he says. Of course, it's not that Arjuna didn't have divine eyes already. He had another type of eyes, which in one sense were higher, because he was seeing Krishna as his friend, but now he needed the motion, so to say, for him to win, because he wanted to see the Virad-Rupa. He expressed like, I'm curious about that. No, I have some curiosity. Actually, he was already seeing Krishna as his friend. That's higher, but he was curious to taste a lower taste, so to say. So Krishna said, I will give you a set of divine eyes, Divya Chakshu. But in this case, Divya has more to do like the eye of a deva or something like that, something that you can see subtle things. Mm-hmm. And again, of course, after some time, Arjuna say, give me back my eyes, please. I want to see you. Okay, 4 arms, not yet 2 arms. Okay, Vibhuj. I'm so satisfied seeing you, your Nara Roop. So yeah, that's another way of mentioning that. Not like to perceive certain issues that are subtle, certain reality, you need a particular set of eyes, which again may not be gross. It's a type of vision. So, for example, the devas are said to do not have gross bodies. They just have subtle bodies. So with subtle bodies, they perceive things that for us are unperceivable, basically. Yeah. Something else, Devamal Prabhu?
That seems to be one of the differences in this expression of the Virad-Rupa is that everyone can see.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I can't think of another example where others are present witnessing Krishna's universal form, but it seems like in this case, everybody present in Bali Mahārāja's court is recognizing Vamandev as Virad-Rupa. So could you say something around that?
Can you repeat the last part of the question? Because I kind of got like lost in one section.
Yeah, just wondering.
So some cases where the Virad-Rupa is shown and not everyone.
I wasn't able to think of another case where the Virad-Rupa is actually shown to everyone present, like on the Battle of Kurukshetra.
Mm-hmm.
Only Arjuna was seeing the universal form, whereas in this case, it's everybody. It sounds like it's everybody in Bali's court.
Yeah, I'm not so sure if everybody's seeing this Virad-Rupa here, no, because of course Bali Mahārāja is witnessing that, and some other entities are offering pranam to it. But all the entities that are generally mentioned offering respects are more like, again, entities with subtle vision, more like devas and like higher planetary systems entities, which may have, so to say, this corresponding eye to perceive this type of form. So I do not recall. Someone turned it. Gitanjali, can you turn off the mic, please? So I've gone through the purpose of this section from different ācāryas, but I've not heard anyone mentioning like everyone was actually seeing that there. So I wouldn't go immediately to that to that conclusion. Yeah.
When it said that Ratnamali is seeing it, that Vamadeva is cheating,
Mm-hmm.
and how she's not witnessing that he's encompassing the universe. She's just seeing somehow her dad is losing out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what's mentioned generally. Yeah. Or even if she's seeing again, if you will like to put the case, okay, she's seeing the whole Trivikram. That doesn't mean that necessarily everyone else was seeing that. No? Yeah, that recalls me when Krishna shows the Virad-Rupa. Again, it's about whom he chooses whom he chooses to see the form. Like when Krishna is showing the Virad-Rupa in the assembly of the Kurus, maybe you recall that. That's another case. No? When Duryodhana wants to orders tie Krishna, and Krishna say, "You won't be able to perform Damodar Lila with me here. I'm not in Braj." So Yasoda can tie me, but you cannot tie me. It's okay, tie me. And he starts like shh. So it's like, okay, where to begin the tying exercise? And at that point, Dhritarashtra is there, and he hears that Krishna showing that, and they can see that. Again, Duryodhana can see it, and almost everyone else can see it, except for Dhritarashtra. So my point here is like everyone is seeing that form there, except for Dhritarashtra. So you can say, oh, Dhritarashtra was not able to see it because he was blind. Of course, that's not the point, but the case. But the point wanted to be made in this connection is that Dhritarashtra is blind. He's the only one not seeing it at that moment. And he asked Krishna, please give me eyes. So give me back for a minute my physical vision. And Krishna said, I don't need you to give you back your physical vision. If I say see, you see, Krishna said. It's not about like physical eye, but if I order, you can see, you can see. So that's another point in that connection. Like everyone was seeing it, except for one person, to make the point that if Krishna wants, whomever he wants will see, whomever he wants will not be able to see for whatever purpose. So we could say that probably Bali Mahārāja was seeing, Ratnamala was seeing with the purpose of making he needed a putana eventually. So we could say Vamadeva found, okay, here's the way of getting my putana in Rajalila. No, I need someone to be willing now to kill me as well. So anyway, some thoughts about it. Okay, something else before concluding? I think we are almost in time. One more, Janita.
It just occurred to me that does killing Krishna or being his mother have the same? Because Putana had a particular covering, like she clearly. What was the name of the devotee or non-devotee or person who wanted to kill Krishna and also be his mother?
Ratnamala.
It's interesting because she wasn't simultaneously holding those desires.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just hard to see how it was like it was a circumstance in which she was feeling that. It wasn't like that's why I guess why it's kripa, because she wasn't holding on to that particular desire. She like circumstantially had that desire. And then Putana, it seems circumstantially had those desires. So it's hard to see how really those desires are being filled, because I don't see Putana as seeing herself as this other time and place person. Oh, these desires are being fulfilled now. Because even it's kind of circumstantial that like she wants to kill Krishna, and then in the experience of that, now she's feeling like, oh, I had this motherly affection. So it seems that the soul didn't feel that connection between having that desire and that desire being reciprocated. So it's like feels like a loss. That's just a reflection I had. Like as a soul, I may have like my psychophysical makeup may not be experiencing what's happening on the level of the soul. So does it like it almost like doesn't count or something? Like it's like unfair. Like Krishna gets the whole picture, but we don't.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Welcome to Jivahood.
I think that's a good good note to conclude in. Krishna's, it's unfair because mercy is unfair, just in case. No? We don't deserve it, so it's unfair. It's not fair. It's not. So it's unfair. Divine injustice. No? And Krishna sees the whole picture and we don't. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Shri Gaur Nityananda ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premananda Hari Bol. Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripasindhubhyo Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavibhyo Namo. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Hari Bol.